I have one tradition. Every Saturday I go to the farmer's market. Not that I'm such a big proponent of a healthy lifestyle, but there's something special about it. The atmosphere, I guess, the noise, the hubbub, the smells of fresh vegetables and fruit. The farmers themselves add to the color, those stocky, weathered men in plaid shirts and worn jeans. You immediately believe that their produce is as natural as can be, without any chemicals or GMOs. And the selection process itself is an art. This is not a supermarket, where all the vegetables are equally smooth and glossy. At the market, each tomato is special, with character. It takes a special eye to choose the juiciest and tastiest one, so I've gotten pretty good at it over the years of my visits. In short, for me, these Saturday outings are a kind of meditation. I get distracted from work, take a walk in the fresh air, well, relatively fresh given the exhausts from the nearest highway, and stock up on vitamins. And then I spend the whole evening conjuring up some fancy dinner in the kitchen. I feel like the chef of a Michelin-starred restaurant, no less. So that Saturday, everything was going according to the usual scenario. I parked my car at the far end of the counter, picked up a wicker basket. Oh yes, image is everything. I walked slowly along the rows, trying to figure out which product would be the highlight of today's culinary program. I must say the assortment was rich, from the usual zucchini and potatoes to some exotic root vegetables, the name of which I will never pronounce in my life. And it had to happen that at the young corn stand, I literally crashed into a short female figure. From the surprise, I even dropped the basket, fortunately almost empty. The lady turned around, obviously intending to explain to me in vivid colors where I should shove my clumsiness, and broke off in mid-sentence, goggling her eyes. I also froze in place, not believing my eyes, because my former mother-in-law was standing in front of me in person. That's the last person I expected to meet at the farmer's market on a Saturday morning. I must say, I've always been lucky with my mother-in-law. I mean, back when she was my mother-in-law. Sandra is a beautiful, vivid woman with a great sense of humor and a sharp mind. There was always something to talk about with her, unlike her daughter, my beloved wife. Melanie and I seem to exist in parallel worlds. I'm a simple IT guy who's into gadgets and video games. She's an ambitious journalist reaching for the stars. It's amazing we even got together and lasted 3 years in marriage. In general, the divorce was as inevitable as the sunrise. We broke up quite amicably, without mutual reproaches and division of property. Sandra and I also tried to maintain an even relationship, although we didn't see each other often after the divorce. We exchanged greetings on holidays, occasionally chatted on the phone, the standard set of ex-relatives, nothing special. And here we are, standing across from each other at the corn stand, blinking and not knowing what to say. Sandra was the first to come to her senses. She broke into her signature dazzling smile and held out her hand in greeting. "Mike, what a meeting! I never thought you were into farmers' markets." I grunted, shaking her slender hand. Sandra smelled of something fresh and citrusy, and that scent was strangely exhilarating, evoking vague memories. "Well, I try to follow the principles of healthy eating. I got charged from you during our kinship times." Sandra laughed brightly, flashing her perfectly white teeth. "Well, at least I taught you something useful, and that's bread. As I recall, you used to specialize more in pizzas and burgers." I spread my hands, trying to express repentance. "It is what it is. Who knew that your broccoli was so delicious if cooked properly?" Sandra nodded approvingly and took me by the elbow, pulling me toward the neighboring stalls. Okay, no need to spread yourself thin. Better tell me how you are in general. How's work, personal life? I bet the girls are lining up for such a presentable young man." Her touch sent an electric shock through my body. I hastily looked away, pretending to be absorbed in choosing potatoes. My personal front had been as quiet as a tank after the divorce, but should I confess that to my former mother-in-law? "Oh, you know, little by little, work, home, same as everyone. I'm spinning like a squirrel in a wheel, no time for romances." "Really?" Sandra grunted, giving me a probing look. Poor thing, driven into a corner by life. "It's okay, it's fixable. Now we'll do some quick shopping and go have lunch. Maybe a romantic mood will appear." And she winked so promisingly that I almost dropped the ill-fated basket a second time. In the end, we really did shop at a waltz pace, dumped the bags in my car, and went to the nearest cafe. I can't say that I often practiced joint meals with former relatives, but it was impossible to refuse Sandra. She was just radiating enthusiasm and anticipation, as if she really couldn't wait to talk to me. Although maybe she was just tired of loneliness. She didn't do too well on the love front after the divorce either. At the cafe, we ordered a salad and a steak each, and surprisingly easily chatted about everything in the world. Sandra asked about my work, hobbies, the latest movies I'd seen. I, in turn, was interested in her affairs and hobbies. It turned out she had taken up yoga and even went on a retreat somewhere in India. Judging by how seductively her light t-shirt hugged her curves, yoga had done Sandra good. During the conversation, we didn't even notice how we emptied our plates and moved on to dessert. Sandra ordered cheesecake and cappuccino, while I settled for an Americano. Watching her appetizingly lick the spoon, I suddenly caught myself thinking that I hadn't been listening to what she was saying for about 5 minutes, but simply admiring her chiseled profile, the sparkle in her eyes, the curve of her neck. Sandra seemed to feel my gaze, looked up, and smiled slyly. "Well, Mikey, remembering the good old days? When you were still an exemplary son-in-law and I was a strict mother-in-law?" I coughed in embarrassment, hiding my eyes. "Yeah, those were the days. But I wouldn't say you were ever very strict. More like the coolest mother-in-law in the neighborhood." Sandra snorted contentedly and playfully slapped my hand. "What a toady! You men are all the same. First you flatter, then you hide in the bushes. And when it comes down to it, you tuck your tails between your legs right away." What is she hinting at? I nearly choked on my coffee at this turn of events. While I sat there coughing, Sandra continued to tease me with her gaze over her cup, as if nothing had happened. Damn, if she weren't my ex-wife's mother, I would have definitely accepted that challenge by now. Wait, what am I talking about? I think the farmer's salad hit me in the head from the unaccustomed. Or is it that next to Sandra, it's always been hard to keep a sober mind? Anyway, suddenly a strange feeling came over me, as if everything that was happening was incredibly right and natural. As if my marriage to Melanie had never happened. As if Sandra and I had always been close and were just pretending to keep up appearances. Apparently, my thoughts were reflected on my face, because Sandra suddenly leaned forward, covering my hand with hers. There were playful sparks dancing in her eyes, but her voice sounded soft and soulful. "Mike, listen. Maybe it's none of my business, but I think it's time for you to shake things up. Start a new life. Turn the page. After all, you're not an old man. You're only 35. It's the perfect time to do crazy things and fall head over heels in love." The touch of her fingers sent an electric current through my skin. I swallowed, trying to calm my racing heartbeat. "Oh, Sandra, if you only knew what crazy things are creeping into my head." I don't know at what point our friendly lunch turned into something more. It seems we were just sitting, chatting, and laughing, and then suddenly we found ourselves sitting unacceptably close, almost touching knees. That our hands would collide on the table from time to time, sending waves of goosebumps through my body. And that we were looking at each other not at all like former relatives at a friendly meeting. At some point, Sandra put aside her empty coffee cup and playfully looked at me from under her lashes. "You know, Mike, it just occurred to me, we've theoretically not been related for a long time. And in fact, there are no reasons that would prevent us from—" She paused meaningfully, and my mouth instantly went dry. Is she really suggesting what I think she is? Taking a chance, I leaned forward and covered her hand with mine. "Sandra, if you're hinting at what I think you are, I'll be honest, I'm not against it. I'm very much for it. But are you sure? What about Melanie? Is it ethical?" Sandra laughed, throwing her head back. A ray of sun slid down her neck, highlighting her delicate skin. "Come on, Mike, we're adults. We don't need to ask anyone's permission. Melanie has been living her own life for a long time and hardly thinks about us. Why these silly conventions?" And leaning forward, she whispered, scorching my cheek with her breath, "I want you, Mike, right now. How about we get a room at the nearest hotel and continue our date there?" Her words and closeness sent a hot wave rolling through my body. My heart started pounding wildly. My mouth went dry. All sensible thoughts instantly evaporated, leaving only one all-consuming desire. "Let's go," I croaked hoarsely, fumbling for my wallet with my credit card. "There's a hotel nearby." After paying the bill, we hurried to the car. The whole short drive to the hotel, I felt Sandra's burning gaze on me and could barely concentrate on driving. It's a good thing there was no traffic, or I would have definitely crashed into something. In the hotel lobby, I hastily booked a room, trying not to meet the receptionist's eyes. The last thing I needed was for him to take us for a couple of seasoned adulterers, although in essence, what else were we? This thought sobered me for a moment, but then Sandra pressed against me from behind, enveloping me with the scent of her perfume, and all doubts instantly vanished. As soon as the door of our room closed behind us, we pounced on each other with the voracity of starving lovers. Crumpling clothes, kissing wherever we could. Sandra turned out to be exactly as I had imagined. Passionate, uninhibited, insatiable. She responded to my touches and whispered obscenities, bringing my desire to unthinkable heights. When our naked bodies finally merged into one, reality simply ceased to exist. There were only the two of us, intertwined in a hot dance, going crazy with sensations. Never before and with no one had I experienced anything like it. Such insane passion, such blinding pleasure, spreading through my veins like molten lava. It seemed to last an eternity, and at the same time flew by in an instant. When we finally collapsed exhausted on the crumpled sheets, I didn't know whether to thank the heavens or curse everything in the world. Sandra had simply destroyed me and recreated me anew. For a while we lay in silence, trying to catch our breath and comprehend what had happened. And then Sandra propped herself up on her elbow and looked into my face with a sly grin. "Well, Mikey, how do you like our little adventure? Do you regret giving in to temptation?" I snorted, pulling her to me and burying my face in her tousled hair. Sandra smelled of something, and that smell made my blood pound in my temples again. "Are you kidding me? This is the best thing that's happened to me in the last 5 years. Although, it still feels kind of awkward. After all, you are my ex-wife's mother." Sandra lightly pinched my side and kissed my nose with a laugh. "Relax, cowboy. What's done is done. The main thing now is what we do next. Personally, I wouldn't mind repeating sometime. If you don't run away from me in horror right now, of course." I hugged her tighter and kissed the top of her head. An unfamiliar feeling was spreading inside me, as if I had finally found my place in life, next to this incredible woman. "Not a chance," I whispered with a smile. "You won't get rid of me now. Get ready. I'll be calling every day and demanding new adventures." Sandra squinted contentedly and rubbed her cheek against my shoulder. It seemed she was quite happy with the prospect. The next few hours flew by like a moment. We made love like obsessed, as if afraid that it was the first and last time. We explored each other's bodies. We talked about some nonsense and laughed like teenagers. And at some point we just lay there, pressed against each other, and were silent, enjoying the comfort and closeness. But all good things must come to an end sooner or later. When it started to get dark outside, Sandra got up with a sigh and began to get dressed, giving me a guilty look. "I'm sorry, Mike. I have to go. I don't want my daughter to suspect anything. And you shouldn't completely drop out of reality either." I nodded, also starting to collect my clothes scattered around the room. Sandra was right. Despite the passion that gripped us, we had to somehow come to our senses and return to ordinary life. After all, each of us had our own obligations and routine. We shouldn't lose our heads completely. As we dressed, we kept glancing at each other and smiling, as if sharing a secret. No awkwardness, no guilt, only the pleasant aftertaste of a chance adventure and a slight excitement. What if someone suspects something? Already at the doorstep of the room, Sandra pulled me to her and kissed me greedily, biting my lower lip at the end. "Thank you for a wonderful day, Mike. You have no idea how long I've been dreaming of allowing myself something like this, to throw off the shackles of decency and just give in to passion, without thinking about the consequences." I grinned, lightly flicking her nose. "You're welcome, Sandy. I, too, have long dreamed of going crazy, at least for a little while." Apparently all the stars aligned. "And thank God," Sandra winked. "And now go. We'll meet sometime on neutral territory, chat, like good old friends." I nodded and pressed my lips to her sun-scented skin one last time, and then I resolutely pulled away and left the room without looking back. It was time to return to reality. On the way home, I pondered what had happened and tried to figure out what to do with these memories now. Bursting into my orderly life like a bright spot, Sandra had awakened something new, dormant deep inside. Some kind of dissatisfaction with the existing state of affairs, a thirst for adventure and craziness. Had I really been content with little all these years, not even realizing what I was depriving myself of? On the other hand, I knew full well that Sandra and I were unlikely to be able to build a full-fledged relationship. Too many conflicting factors, the former marriage to her daughter, the age difference, the mismatch of life goals. Today had just been a gift of fate, a breath of fresh air for both of us, but to turn it into something more would be guaranteed to ruin everything. And I made a decision to leave this episode as a beautiful memory that would always warm me in moments of despondency and routine. Not to try to repeat it, not to chase after a pie in the sky, just to keep it in my heart as a reminder. Life is full of surprises, and there is always a chance to suddenly catch luck by the tail. The main thing is to be open to new possibilities. Several months have passed since that memorable weekend. Life has returned to its usual course. Work, meetings with friends, the same trips to the farmer's market on weekends. Sandra and I occasionally called or texted each other, but carefully avoided any hints of what had happened between us. Only by her special, slightly sly intonation did I guess that she too was remembering and smiling to herself. One Saturday morning, I went to the market as usual, anticipating the hunt for fresh produce and aromatic coffee in a paper cup. Parking at the far end of the row, I inhaled the cool autumn air with pleasure and set off along the stalls, smiling and nodding to the familiar farmers. Suddenly, my gaze caught a familiar silhouette from the crowd at the flower stall. My heart skipped a beat. A pleasant warmth spread through my chest. Sandra, of course. Who else could it be? I slowed my pace, wondering, should I go up and say hello, or pretend I didn't notice and walk by? But then Sandra turned around, as if sensing my gaze. Her face lit up with such a sincere, bright smile that my heart felt relieved. No awkwardness, no agony, just two kindred spirits who met by chance on a fine autumn day. I walked up to Sandra and gallantly kissed the air by her cheek, ostentatiously sniffing. You smell of chrysanthemums and pumpkin latte. Has the seasonal madness gotten to you too? Sandra laughed ringingly and playfully slapped my hand with a fan of maple leaves. Look who's talking, Lord of the Zucchini. Some connoisseur of farm products you are. We teased each other for a while longer, laughing and squinting at the surprisingly bright sun for late autumn. And then, without any agreement, we moved side by side along the rows, occasionally commenting on the assortment and from time to time accidentally touching elbows. And at that moment I suddenly realized with utmost clarity, despite the transience of our connection and its non-obvious prospects, I'm damn glad that everything happened exactly like this. That fate brought Sandra and me together at the right time in the right place, that we gave in to the impulse, and at least for a little while threw off the shackles of convention, giving each other unforgettable moments of sincerity and passion. And let it be one time, and not grow into a serious relationship. But now we have a shared secret, shared memories, so vivid and exciting that just the thought of them brings a smile and makes the heart beat faster. And this, in my opinion, is much more valuable than putting up with bland routine for the sake of ghostly stability. So yes, I definitely don't regret what happened. On the contrary, I am grateful to life for sometimes giving us such unexpected gifts. It shakes us up, reminds us, we are alive, damn it. Everyone has a chance to suddenly go off the rails, catch luck by the tail, take everything from life. And it's stupid not to take this chance, cowardly hiding behind the curtain of pseudo-decency. As for Sandra, well, I'm sure she and I will be fine. We will remain friends, former relatives with a very spicy secret. Maybe from time to time we will meet for lunch and give each other sly glances, remembering that crazy day. And maybe fate will throw us a couple more unforgettable rendezvous. Who knows? But even if not, I still don't regret anything. Because the main thing is that we gave each other a piece of sincere, incomparable happiness. We were able to break out of the ordinary for a moment and find something real, even if short-lived. And this priceless experience will stay with us forever. So you know what? I urge everyone who is reading me now, don't be afraid to do crazy things. Life sometimes presents unexpected surprises, and it's stupid to refuse them. Of course, you shouldn't destroy families and risk cherished relationships for the sake of a fleeting affair. But closing yourself off from everything new, trembling over your familiar little world, is also not a way out. Just be open to miracles. Grab luck by the tail when it rushes by. Fall in love, laugh, take risks, and most importantly, don't be shy about being yourself, listening to your true desires. Believe me, when you are lying in your old age in your bed and scrolling through the years you've lived in your memory, you won't regret these bright, crazy moments one bit. But you will regret what you never dared to experience. It seems that on this life-affirming note, I will end my story. I hope it will help someone become a little bolder and more determined. Well, it's time for me to get back to my farmer's purchases before all the tastiest things are gone. Good luck to all and have unforgettable adventures. And be careful. You never know where a dashing twist of fate is waiting. Quite possibly in the vegetable row of the nearest market. Why not? The devil might be joking. Did you like this story? Let us know in the comments what you liked. Subscribe to our storytelling podcast. Also, don't forget to like and ring the bell so you don't miss more interesting stories. See you soon.